Hey, I'm Sarah Smith, family doctor, clinical day advisor, and the chatting coach. Welcome back to Sustainable Clinical Medicine podcast, where we're going to be interviewing peers or world experts who can help us think about our clinical day in a way that is more sustainable and create time for our lives outside of medicine. And welcome back. Today we have with us Kim Downey, who's going to tell us a bit about her story and life. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. All right. So give us a bit of background about you.
Sure. So I'm a pediatric physical therapist by training, and I was working in a local elementary school, and I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer in the fall of 2020, and I had surgery for that and experienced a complication. And then there were more complications the following summer. And then as I was recovering from that, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And then I had surgery and radiation for that. And then I was diagnosed with breast cancer on the other side, and I had surgery and radiation for that. And then when I thought I'd finally be moving forward, I showed up for what I thought was a routine imaging visit, but my amazing radiologist wasn't there. And when I asked where he was, they said he died a month ago. And I couldn't believe it. I asked what happened, and they said they didn't know. And in that moment in my heart, I just knew that he had taken his own life. And I came to find out that was true. And I was devastated, and it changed my whole life. And I felt a calling to support doctors. So that's what I do.
Well, we're very grateful for you for
Thank
supporting.
you.
And I'm very interested to hear more about how you do that. Before we go there, can you tell us what had drawn you to physical therapy and specifically pediatrics? Because we do have plenty of allied health listening in and trying to help create sustainability in their career as well. So, what did you love about, or what kind of drew you to that?
Sure. My mom was a nurse before I was born, and I know sometimes people tend to follow the path of their parents. And I always liked biology. And in high school, I was on the ambulance corps. So when I was looking at colleges, I visited Ithaca College, and the woman asked me what I was interested in. And I said, I want to do something in the medical field, but I don't want to be a doctor or a nurse. I didn't want to go to school all the years to be a doctor. And back then, nurses did more of the changing of the bedpans. Now they have help with those things. And so I didn't really want to do either one of those things. And they said, it sounds like you might like our physical therapy program. And I actually said, what's physical therapy? I didn't know back then, but they said it's hard to get into. It looks like you had the grades and the extracurriculars. And she said, you can always leave, but they didn't take transfer students. It was quite intense. Back then, it was a 4-year bachelor program. And so I said, sounds good. So that was actually how I got started. And I've always loved children. So I gravitated towards pediatrics.
Yeah. And what did that look like to be a pediatric physical therapist in one of the schools? What were you doing? What was your day-to-day looking like?
My first introduction to pediatrics, my first job was at a hospital doing general physical therapy because we were told in school it's great to get a 1 year background as a generalist. And I think that was very good advice. So my introduction was actually, I did part-time in the NICU and working with premature babies, and then would see after school kids with cerebral palsy and things like that. And I enjoyed all of it. And then my last job was working at a school with young children with special needs. Some of them just had developmental delay, or they had all kinds of diagnosis. Kids say the darndest things, and they're adorable. So I left them as my health challenges, so I do miss it.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Absolutely. All right. So then tell us what you did once you had this new insight into what had happened to your radiologist. What did it look like to go and advocate for doctors and their mental health?
So I had connected with Dr. Michael Hirsch, who's a GI doctor in Chicago, and he coaches physicians. And I wasn't feeling very well. Like, I'm pretty resilient by nature, and I kept thinking one more thing and I'll be done, one more thing and I'll get back to my regular life. But after that happened, I wasn't so resilient anymore. And we ended up connecting and having a call, and we continued communicating. And then he started coaching me. A part of it was just to help me move forward and get out of feeling so low in regards to my radiologist. And part of it was processing and accepting some things that had happened during my medical journey. And he helped me with all of that. I had been doing so much ruminating, and he helped me get my brain back. So then he connected me on LinkedIn the spring of 2023, so just about 3 years ago. And I was hoping to talk to doctors, thinking they might have ideas for me in ways that I could then help my own doctors. I wanted to find a way to help my own doctors locally. And the doctors I would talk to would say, I feel like you're meant to make a bigger impact. You can make a bigger impact outside the system. But I didn't want to hear any of that. I had no grand aspirations. And I just wanted to help my own doctors. But when I started talking to them, I would sense who they'd want to talk to. And I would say, oh, you should connect with so and you should connect to. So we formed like a LinkedIn family. And then in the fall of 2023, I started my podcast, The Stand Up for Doctors. And then after 6 months, I'm like, I should pair people up because they were waiting a long time. And I thought for richer conversations. So then I started pairing people up. And then the next summer, I started a Substack newsletter, also Stand Up for Doctors, because I was sending my own doctors monthly updates so they know they had a patient that was trying to help them. And this way, more people can see my monthly advocacy efforts.
Mhm.
And then a year ago, January, we reached out to the first 15 doctors who were guests on my YouTube channel, and we compiled this book, White Coats, Courageous Hearts. And Dr. Kevin Poe writes the endorsement on the back. And we kept going. And just this month, earlier last month, we released White Coats, Human Hearts. And this one is 11 physicians, two physician spouses, and two patients. So I say every time a doctor shares their story, another doctor feels less alone, and there's many more stories to tell.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Tell us some of the things that you've learned about what doctors were facing that might be contributing to some of this heartbreak and like you said, the suicidal thoughts and actions that we're seeing sometimes in our physician colleagues.
Yeah, one thing that I didn't, as many physicians that I had spoken with, one thing that I didn't actually know about until he chose to write his chapter is Dr. David Alfrey is a retired anesthesiologist in Nashville, and he had written his own book, Saving Grace, What Patients Teach Us About Life, Death, and the Balance in Between. So when I had him on my podcast, we talked about some stories from his book. So then when he offered to write a chapter in this book, he says, I already wrote my own book. Let me write on something that I didn't share in my own book. So his chapter was called Substance Use Disorder in Anesthesiologists, Highlighting Risks for All Doctors. And as many conversations as I had, that was not on my radar. And I didn't realize that at all, what a risk it is. And since then, I've actually had a physician on who lost his license. He was, in what he shares in the episode actually, is that he never abused the drugs of anesthesia, thinking that would keep him safe. Then his drug of choice became heroin, and that did not work out so well. So he says that kind of tongue in cheek. But I just felt I shared, I think, in that episode that I feel like there should be a warning, like there is on a pack of cigarettes. If you're choosing anesthesia, like I asked him, do they talk about that? And he said there was like one film, like maybe the first day of anesthesia residency or something like that. But back then, if you're doing okay, like you don't relate to it. And he's, oh, that's not me, or I don't have to worry about that until you do. That's just one story.
Yeah, yeah. What are some of the standout themes that make doctors at risk of not doing well that you've come across in your stories and conversations?
Some of it is, of course, they feel like they have to be perfect all the time, and no one is perfect. And there's a lot of shame, like if they're do procedures or surgeries and there's a complication, because obviously they're just trying to help patients. So then there's so much like guilt and shame about that, and they just replay it over and over. What could I done? What should I done? Did I retract too hard? This and that, and they play it over and over again. And there's a physician who shares a story about that in this book. Dr. Mark McLaughlin is a neurosurgeon, and he left pediatric neurosurgery following, and he shares that story in there. And so many times they walk around just saying, I thought it was just me. I thought I was the only one. So they're all walking around thinking everyone else is fine and everyone else looks fine, but they're all thinking that. And also that they don't feel safe to be vulnerable, But like Dr. Michael Hirsch has said, being vulnerable doesn't mean I have to tell you everything, but when you let little bits and pieces of yourself show, you'll be surprised at how it's received. And I say again, how every time a doctor shares their story, another doctor feels less alone. When they share all these stories, it's like another kind of me too. And then they do feel less alone, and we're trying to change the stigma of mental health and things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Tell us a bit about some of the organizations you're working with and some of the things that you're seeing them doing for support for the doctors.
Sure. So, Medicine Forward, their mission is to catalyze positive change so physician patient relationships can flourish. So, right now, a couple of their initiatives, they have a newsletter that spotlights stories. So, doctors can share their stories in this newsletter. And that's just another avenue for them to have their voice shared. And then they also have they're calling it the Rising Star program. So if there's doctors who haven't much been like on social media or out there just going to work but are exploring entrepreneurship or want to get their voice out there through the Medicine Star, the Rising Star program, they help them find like a place where they can speak twice. They can write 2 articles and be on 2 podcasts, and it helps them get their feet wet if they haven't been in these spaces. And
Hmm.
then Healthcare Reinvention Collaborative, I'm associated with them, and they say we're not going to be the ones that change healthcare, but we are going to connect all the change makers who will. So we support each other's work, and they'll frequently highlight my posts, but then I've spotlighted them. And there's a lot of people doing great work out there, and we just want to help them find each other. And then I've also become an ambassador for the Dr. Lorna Breen Heroes Foundation,
Hmm.
and that works on advocating for the mental health of physicians and policy change, like removing intrusive licensing questions. And they've made a lot of great progress in a relatively short period of time. And they're having a healthcare leadership collaborative event in Washington, D.C. in a few weeks. And I attended last year, and I'll be attending again. And then Jody Green with the Clinician Burnout Foundation, she's trying to support clinicians in all the ways that she can. So those are a few organizations that I've supported.
That's fantastic. That's excellent. All right. So next, so you're interviewing stories of physicians. I agree. Storytelling is so important for us because we hear ourselves potentially threaded through the stories of others. It helps us feel less alone or more commonality with others. I know that many physicians in their day-to-day, when they're in a room with a patient, they're by themselves, they're alone, and then they're heading home to their life outside of medicine, which is hopefully a place where they're getting nourished and rested and looked after, ready to do this all again tomorrow. Have you noticed if there's a place that we could be intervening that seems to be helpful? Is it as we are studying medicine, like you said, the anesthesiologist who got a lecture at the very beginning who said somewhere along your career you might feel badly or feel alone or feel it tickled his brain, but it didn't really give him the resources he needed. Is it
Yeah.
as we're going through our career? Is it as we are struggling? What sort of things have you seen helpful?
So at first I would say yes, meaning all of that, right? So what I would say is the culture of medicine has to change beginning in med school. And are you connected with Dr. Simon Craig?
No, I'm not connected.
Oh, okay. So he's in Australia, and he wrote a beautiful book, From Hurting to Healing, Delivering Love to Medicine and Healthcare. And he's a OB-GYN and a healthcare leader. And when his books was one of the first I read when got involved in these spaces, and that made me realize that these issues are ubiquitous around the world and over time.
Mm.
So I learned from him as well. Some doctors go in, like he wrote a chapter in our latest book, and he says he went into medicine, he thinks, in part to feel a sense of belonging. And at first that didn't happen. And he shares that story and how he finally did find a sense of belonging. So I feel like in medical education, like they don't learn the skills, right? Like communication and emotional intelligence, but also they aren't taught to care after themselves. It's actually the opposite. It's like suppress your own needs for the patient. And okay, in the moment, if you're running a code or doing a surgery, yes, that's true. But then they don't process when bad things happen. They just have to move on to the next patient and they don't process it later. So they need to be taught like all of these things, and also that it is important to take care of your own body, because I feel like they're so taught to suppress their needs, like not eating for hours, not a lack of sleep, running on graham crackers and ginger ale from like a patient's leftover tray or something. And that is not sustainable. So then once they get to be an attending, that's so ingrained in them is that they've forgotten how to take care of themselves. And that is so, it's just so important. And that they do need support at any time. I feel like they need to learn like the help and resources that are actually out there, like safe and confidential, like there's on the Dr. Lorna Breen Heroes Foundation page. They have a great list of free and confidential resources, and they need to have access to these things because, to that, speaking to that anesthesiologist I told you about, he wasn't struggling when he heard that information, but then when he was struggling, perhaps there weren't safe resources that he felt that he could access. So I feel like just you have to get certified in CPR every year so you know how to do it for the patients. So I feel like that there should be maybe some annual just training or information or something that you have to do to make sure that you're aware of all those resources. Just like when I was at the nursing homes, every year we would have to take fire safety. We have to do these little modules. So they should maybe have to do a module that makes sure they know how to care for themselves.
We're seeing a lot more education weekends or conferences popping up. I get asked by colleagues, should I go to this physician wellness weekend, or I'm looking for a retreat for a weekend or with other physicians. I think the like-minded piece is important. Like you said, hearing other physicians' stories is helpful for the physician struggling, because then they feel like both they recognize the story and that it's a peer, so they look similar, so they can hear themselves in the story. I think the wellness retreats are, we hear about other authors who their journey into healing started with this retreat that they were dragged to by a colleague. So we may not want the woo, we may not want to
Mm-hmm.
relax, we may not want to recognize that we are suffering, but that whole experience of immersion outside of medicine, but in the company of medicine or other doctors or in a retreat, could be a possibility for this, like what you're saying. There should be something we do each year that's good for us.
To that point, it's a segue to the fact that I'm actually hosting an inaugural physician retreat in New York, Columbus Day weekend of this year. It's October 9th to 12th, and all the doctors coming. We're not full yet, and I could actually give you a secret coupon code for your audience until it's full. And it's going to blend all of the things, like from all of the conversations I've heard, and it's by doctors and for doctors, like what they really need. So their CMEs are going to be available and they can use CME funds. And there's going to be no boring lectures, but I have a team of 14 doctors leading topics and activities. So the topics will be on things that doctors really need and want to hear about. Everything from like communication and trauma informed care for you and your patients, and setting boundaries, all of those things. But we're interspersing it with things that are good for people to get themselves into their body, which is good for doctors too, without being like too woo. A little bit, like as you were saying, like for instance, we're having abstract art. So like we don't want a doctor to be discouraged and say, I'm not going to do that half-hour art thing because I don't know how to draw a horse. Like it's abstract art, so anything goes. And we're having music is going to be a part, and we're having a drumming circle and line dancing, and they're all only like 30-minute increments, so they'll feel safe to give anything a try, or everything is optional. And we're having improv for doctors because it's going to be an icebreaker the first night, because there are no mistakes. So just to be able to have fun and laugh together, and every doctor coming is so excited. It's going to be incredible.
I feel doctors can probably be good at improv because what we do every day is we try and problem solve for the patient in front of us, and we really have to do a lot of thinking on the fly. So using those skills in a fun and creative way sounds quite entertaining anyway.
Yes.
Need to see how that goes. That sounds fun. Very good. How do you see physicians in their day-to-day being able to connect? We know that connection is one of the antidotes for the trauma that they're experiencing in their day-to-day, whether that's just hearing painful stories of others or the fact
Mhm.
that they are hurting themselves or that they're feeling shame or discouraged about an outcome that happened for their patient, or they just can't give enough of themselves, and that's creating
Mhm.
hurt and harm. But we know some of the antidote of that is connection. But like you said earlier, vulnerability, talking to your nearest and dearest or nearest colleagues, they may not be your dearest,
Yeah.
could be hard. But is there
Mhm.
any thing you've heard of that can be helpful in that, breaking that sort of ice or breaking those relationships to really get them forming closely for physicians?
Sure. Speaking to your point, connection mitigates trauma, and that is so important. And I feel like for doctors to remember why they started medicine in the first place. And I know that they feel like the visits have to be so quick, but I've seen 44 doctors so far, and I've had all kinds of experiences, but it's the ones that still, even within that 15, 20 minutes, take that time to connect with the patient. That fills their cup because you're right. Lots of times they're in a room with a patient all day. So that is so fulfilling, and I've had some visits with doctors that I would say are sacred, actually. And so the ones that have become like numb to it all or move in and so fast and out so fast, I feel sad for them and me. So one is just like connecting with your patients. And the other is there are stories in our books about like leadership, and if doctors are leaders, right? They're leaders of their team, and
Mhm.
they can form teams that support each other, and they can have connections with their coworkers, with their staff. And Dr. Simon Craig shares a great story, couple great stories that have to do with curry puffs and chocolate cake, where he felt belonging and a sense of connection. And so that's the ways you can connect at work. And then outside of work, just having someone that is a safe person that you can really be yourself with. Everyone needs a person like that. And I feel like there should be a buddy system like there is in the army. Like every med student, resident, and doctor like needs a buddy. But in their own life, whether it is a spouse, a friend, a partner, a coach, a therapist. And in our church, we have like a women's fellowship group and a men's fellowship group. And the guys that show up every Saturday morning at 8 o'clock, they've worked all week, but just to have that bonding time, or like a hobby, they could do it through a hobby. So it's just they need to find someone that they can talk to. And then I also try to create those spaces again through the work that I'm doing and through connecting. Just today, I connected 7 male physicians in a private message I like did. I'm like, you guys should know each other, because they've spoken about the same things. So I'm finding ways to facilitate that. And I'm thinking of having Zooms in preparation for the retreat, finding out what doctors want to talk about and letting them get together to talk about these things. So I think there's lots of options, and it's very important because lots of times doctors let their friendship slide because when you're a resident, you don't have time. And then sometimes when you're attending, like you say, you're in a room with a patient all day, then you go home to your family. But nurturing relationships is critical.
Yeah, the permission to go find your people and be connected. I
Mm.
went to a GP learning night this week, and it's not something I tend to go and do very often because it just takes extra time. You've had a busy day all day, then you've got to
Mm.
drive. For me, it was 40 minutes to get there, to be connected with colleagues, and then drive home again. It was about a new skill or permission giving they've given us. We can now prescribe in a new domain that we couldn't prescribe in before. They've taken the all of the locks and keys away so we can actually get. But there's some vulnerability in doing that for the first time because you're doing something that you weren't able to do prior. And so that
Sure.
ability to say, Is this okay? How's everybody else going to be doing it? Am I going to be in line with everyone else so that I'm following the rules? And having that presented by fellow colleagues at the same level, in a room full of fellow colleagues at my level, all talking about kind of the things that they've used that are helpful, how they do it, how they're documenting it, how to be safe. And it was coming home from that was I felt connected. We didn't have a lot of connection time, so I had to dash off quickly to get back home before it was too late at night. But just having that ability to just see others outside of their clinical space telling you it's okay, here's how we're doing it, here's how they're doing it, okay, then I'm on the right path, can be very helpful for that connection. Even if it's not the sharing of stories, there's still the sharing of stories about how we do our work and how we're doing things to keep ourselves and our patients safe.
I love that so much. And then hopefully, if you were able to get contact information for those other physicians, that there might come a time soon where you have a question came up. Because again, it's
Mm.
new to you, right? It's like learning a new skill or something. So to have another doctor to run things by, I think
They
that's
did.
great.
They did. They had on the back end of that Facebook group that's already been in place for
Uh,
years, and we were able to figure out where that was so we can ask further questions. And you're right, that further allows the conversation to keep going so that you can make sure you're staying within your safe zone and not feeling like you're having to do things just because patients want it.
yes, yes.
Yeah. No, it's good and excellent. Anything we haven't spoken about that we should be thinking about, talking about before we end our conversation?
I think you've covered a lot of things. I think you would ask me before we hopped on if I had any take-home messages to share.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
in a few bullet sentences, again, that I've learned from doctors, Dr. Charity Hicks wrote a chapter in our second book, and we titled it Supporting Yourself Outside of Medicine to Feel Better Inside of Medicine. And
Mm.
that's what we're saying is so important to have like a hobby, just anything that can nurture you because doctors sometimes their whole identity gets wrapped up in I'm a doctor, right? So then if they get laid up or something and they can't either do their surgery or go to work, they feel really lost. But you're never just a doctor. You're also whatever spouse, partner, mother, father, brother, sister. Like you have other roles in your life. So just to have something that nurtures you outside of medicine, I feel is really critical. And then also Dr. Mark McLaughlin in his chapter, he's the neurosurgeon I told you about, shares never worry about a patient alone. And that
Mm.
would have saved him, he shares in the book, like 15 years of grief and isolation and shame if he would have just talked to someone. He shares the powerful story. He reunited with the family of the little boy who was still alive, and it just changed his whole entire perspective. And then there's always a path forward. So Dr. Behruz Beybad was, I think, the first one that shared that with me. And you're never alone. And no matter like how big things get in your life, either inside or outside of medicine, there's so many people that want to help you, that will help you. Like other doctors, I know so many doctors who would talk to a colleague, whether they're like a coach or therapist or just as another physician, that they want to help their colleagues.
Yeah, that's so true. I think that first point that just a doctor, if that's your whole identity and you start not liking medicine, that's
Yeah.
a big deal problem and risk for you. We need something that we can be excited about
Yeah.
outside of medicine,
Yes.
especially if medicine starts being like if our burnout scores are going up, if medicine starts being, it is hard. Medicine's hard.
Right.
Also, you're not enjoying it anymore because of the system or the whatever it looks like that's bothering you. Yeah, like you said, it's hard to sit down and figure out what do I want to do as a hobby. So it may not look like that formalization of I do this now. Is there something that
Right.
also gets you excited that gives you a little bit of life outside of medicine? Something.
Yes, and some
And it can be
doctors don't
small.
even know where to start. So, like, literally, like some people will say, think about what did you like to do when you're a teenager. So, some doctors, like, were in a rock band and they might start taking guitar lessons again. Or you could even literally just Google hobbies and go through it. You might like to try. One doctor there was having a PTO at his kid's school and they were getting together. It was a fundraiser or something to play pickleball. And at first he's, oh, geez. But he got there and he said, that was actually fun. fun. So it could be anything, and then just try it. And if you don't like it, and I recorded a podcast with Kevin MD and two physical therapists, and one of them shares a story. He was working with a surgeon who was having neck and back issues. And the surgeon, he tried so many things, but what ended up helping him was pottery and ballroom dancing. It was the way he was moving his hands and his body helped support him to continue doing surgery in a way nothing else could.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that. That's so fun. Just on that note, so my husband decided to take up social pickleball just down the road.
Oh, okay. Oh,
And
so
I went,
that's a
I go,
worldwide phenomenon as well now. Pickleball's a thing.
totally. And on Friday night, it's social pickleball. So if you're not there, you're not there, which is great for
Yeah.
doctors because if you've had a big week or you're on call, in fact, there's quite a few of the local doctors from the hospital and emergency department who go along. And then he said to me, I wasn't there one Friday night. I had to go do something else. And they were like, "Where's Sarah? Where's Sarah?" I'm like, they know my name already and they're
Oh,
already checking in to see where I am and they want me to come back. And I had gone to the gym because that's right, because I was rehabbing a knee because of course pickleball you have to use your knees. So FYI guys, you might have to go to the physical therapist.
yeah. You'll keep us in business. The doctors
That's right.
playing
That's
pickleball keep
right.
the physical therapists in business.
Yeah. So I was back the next week because I'm like, oh, this is a social network that I didn't think I didn't
Yes.
didn't know I needed.
And that's a perfect example, right? It's a surprise. And then if it's social and it's not too intense, because I've heard at our local YMCA that you don't want to go on a Saturday morning at 8 o'clock unless you're really into it.
That's right. You want to find the one that's very social. You can play for
Yeah.
the amount of time that your body will let you, but you're just there to have fun and connect and do something different. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you for this conversation, Kim. How do people find you if they're wanting to connect and learn more about what you're doing?
Thanks again. I've loved this conversation, and I'm on LinkedIn a lot. So, LinkedIn is one place I love to connect with people on LinkedIn. And my website is standupfordoctors.org. And we have a tab that says books. And then you can see the authors of all of our books and order the books. And then we have a tab that says inaugural physician retreat, where you
Mhm.
can learn more about the treat and register. And then my episodes are available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Amazon Music, and it's all Stand Up for Doctors in my Substack newsletter. So if you even Google Kim Downey or Stand Up for Doctors, you'll find me.
Perfect. Thank you so much again. And you all have a good rest of your week and go find your connections and your fun outside of medicine.
Love it.
Bye. Hey, if you found this podcast episode helpful, I would encourage you to like and subscribe. Every time you do, you help a colleague or friend find our podcast and it can help them too. Don't forget to share it along with your friends. If you're looking for extra help, don't forget we have charting champions for physicians and smarter charting for nurse practitioners and other clinicians to help you get home with your work done. We are helping you create sustainable clinical medicine. Thanks for listening.